I have decided to follow Jesus. Anybody know that one? I have decided. Sing it with me if you know it. Don't be shy. To follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. And everybody said, amen, amen. I don't know if you could tell, SE fam, but the whole time I was singing, I was trying not to make eye contact with my wife because she has told me over and over and over and over again to leave the singing to the people who can actually sing. And even though it breaks my heart a little bit every time she sends me a text to stay in my lane, I know that she's right. And that's why I need you guys to understand something this morning. I need you to understand that the reason I'm leading this conversation with that song is not because I'm trying to show off my vocal range. No, the reason I started this conversation with that song is because we're kicking off a series this morning about what it means to actually follow Jesus. And every time I thought about this song in the last several weeks, I couldn't help but think about how much I really dislike singing that song growing up in church. Okay, and I can't speak for anybody else in the house who grew up in church going to Sunday school. But that song about following Jesus and not turning back was easily my least favorite song in church. Right? My favorite song was the one about God told Noah to build an arky. Anybody know? If you know, you know. But my least favorite was when we sang about how we were going to follow Jesus and we weren't going to turn back. And the reason it was my least favorite is not because I didn't want to follow Jesus. The reason I didn't like singing that song growing up in church is because, truth be told, as much as I wanted to follow Jesus, there were still some things in some people that I didn't want to leave behind. And I'm going to go out on a limb today and guess that's the one thing that we all have in common this morning. Right? The one thing we all have in common. It doesn't matter if you've been in church your entire lives. Casey is here somewhere. The dude was literally born, I think, in this front row. He's been in this church his entire life. Doesn't matter if you have a missed service in like 10 years, or maybe this is the first time you walked into a service in the last 10 years. It doesn't really matter if you knew everyone. Maybe some of you in here, you're like, I even knew the songs better than the band knew the songs. Or maybe you're that person in the room and you're just saying watermelon, watermelon the whole time we're singing because you don't want the person next to you to know that you don't know the songs that we're singing. It doesn't matter where you fall on the spiritual spectrum, if you will. I think the one thing every single one of us in this room probably have in common is that we all feel a tension between following Jesus and still not wanting to leave some things and some people behind. And I don't mean to project my, story or insecurities on you guys, but I just remember as a kid, I would be in church and everybody would be like, I have decided no turning back. And I just remember sitting in the back thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, one of two things. Either these people are lying or they know something I don't know. Because I don't understand how they can just sing about how they're going to follow Jesus and they're not gonna turn back. Because I'm like, there's a lot of, I'm all for Jesus. I want to go to heaven. That sounds great, better than the alternative. But I don't know if I want to leave that behind. And for the longest time, I didn't understand why people, like the character in our story today, were just so willing to leave everything behind. And maybe I'm just reading someone's journal this morning. You're in the room or watching online and you felt that tension in your head the whole time, but you can't say it out loud, right? Because you don't want people to think you're crazy. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm all for Jesus, but man, can I hang on to a few things? Our anchor text today is going to be in the Gospel of Matthew. If you're new to the Bible, Matthew is one of four eyewitness accounts to the life of Jesus, right? We have Matthew chronologically, and what's the next one? Matthew, Mark, and then John, right? We got Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, four gospel accounts, have a little bit of their own different twist to it. Matthew was written primarily to a Jewish audience by a Jew himself, who, as we're about to find out in a little bit, wasn't the other Jewish people that he was writing to weren't a big fan of his, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But I want to read you the gospel writer's account of his own conversion. So he's writing a story telling you about how he met Jesus. And that's where we're going to spend our time today. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 9 today. If you're there, say I'm there. If you need time, say I need more time, bro. Matthew chapter 9. You there? Need more time? You got it? Everybody got it? Chapter 9. We're only going to read one verse today. Jeremy always makes fun of me for this, but I'm going to preach this entire sermon out of one verse. And so if you're like, what about the rest? You can read it when you get home. Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. The writer says that as Jesus went from there, where's there? There was his hometown, right? As he was going there from his hometown, he says that Jesus saw a man named Matthew. And he was sitting at his tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. I wrote this, you guys know, if you've been here a while, I write the randomest things in my Bible that just pop up in my mind. When I read it, I wrote this the other day. I wrote, not much of a sales pitch, huh? Right? But you got to love it. You got to love the audacity of Jesus to walk up to a guy who, as far as we can tell, he had never had any interaction with. And he just said 2 words. This dude's just sitting at work, clocked in, waiting for his lunch break, like it's about that time, man. And I got like a casserole, I'm going to stink up the whole lunchroom, and I'm just kind of waiting to clock out. And Jesus walks up to him, 2 words, and he says, follow me. Now, obviously the Bible doesn't, give us a ton of details, and so we can't tell tone. And this is one of those situations where I'm like, man, don't you just wish we could see? I just feel like tone's everything. What kind of tone did Jesus have? Right, I was watching the Alabama game late last night, and one of the linemen did something they shouldn't have done, and he got a flag, and you could see Nick Saban was so mad. He ran up the field, and he's like, get over it. He's like, get out. He was so mad. Do you guys think that was how Jesus said it? You think he just walked up and was like, follow me? You think? Or do you think maybe it's like, when you're at a concert and you're a thing and there's a lot of people and you see someone and they're far away and and you're like, oh, yeah, you're like, meet up. Follow me. You think it was like that? Or do you think it was like, how they do in all those like soap operas, the really dramatic shows where they'll say something and they'll dramatically pause, and what you think Jesus was like, follow me, and then walked away. That's my favorite thing of all those dramas and soap operas. Not that I watch soap operas, but I have some pagan friends who have no life, and they watch soap operas, and they tell me all the time. This is a true story. My wife and I were watching some show the other day. I'm not going to tell you because you're going to judge me. It's not a bad show. But we're outside laughing, and she's like, why are you laughing? It's not even a funny scene. And I just think it's so funny when they do that in shows. You know what I'm talking about? Where somebody will say something dramatic, and they'll pause and just stare at each other, and then someone just walks away. And I'm like, just one time I want to do that in real life, in a conversation. I just want to say something like, no, that's not what happened. And then just walk away. All right, you guys think, I don't know, you think that's what Jesus did? You think he just walked up and he's like, follow me, and he just paused and walked away? I don't know. Maybe I wasn't there. Here's what I do know, though, is that Jesus walked up to this guy and said 2 words. He said, follow me. And if you're new to the Bible and you don't know how this story ends, you're not going to believe what happens next. 2 words. We don't know the tone. He just walked up to this dude and he said, follow me. And listen to what the writer says. He's telling his own story. He says, again, Jesus went from there. He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. Are you ready for this? And it says, and Matthew got up, and what did he do? Followed him. No questions asked. I got a lot of questions if I'm Matthew. Come on, let's be honest, right? I mean, if you were, imagine, I don't know where you work. Imagine you're at work doing the thing that you do. Joe, tomorrow you're just doing your thing, and some random homeless stranger man came up to you. He's like, follow me. I would imagine you'd have some questions. Like what? Give me a question. Where? Thank you. Anybody else? Why? Who are you again? Right? How long are we going to be gone? Do you have an itinerary? Can you let me know? Can you give me an hour? Can I text my family? Nana's going to be worried because it's Taco Tuesdays. If I'm not home by 5 p.m., she's going to be like, what happened? She's going to call 911. I mean, I got a lot of questions. Can I pray about it? Right? You guys know that thing that we do, church people, when we don't want to do something and someone asks us and we say, can I pray about it? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Some of you are mad. You're like, you're telling them all of our secrets, okay? If you're new to church, that's a thing. right? I'm just telling you right now, a little pro tip, right? Someone in church asks you to do something, you don't want to do it, and you don't want to say no, just be like, I just need to pray about it, right? You're not really going to pray about it, but that's like the ultimate get out of jail free card. Just say that. There's nothing. What are they going to say? Don't pray about it? Like, I just need to seek the Lord and pray about it, Some of you are like, I can't use that anymore now. Thanks, Pastor. You're going to be like, you're lying. You're not praying about it, right? But think, though, if there was ever a time for somebody to say, can I pray about it? Can I ask my life coach? Can I ask my therapist? Can I ask my counselor? Can you give me a minute to do a, for and against, like a pros and cons list? Can I you want me to follow you? That's like, you didn't even give me any margin. You didn't you want me can I do that? No, the writer says, Jesus says, follow me. And guess what Matthew do? He shut the thing down. He got up and he followed me. Somebody ask me why, please. Why? Thank you, Sarah. Why? Right? That's the question. Right? And it's so easy for those of us who are super familiar with this narrative to just read over it. It's so easy to read a story like this. I'm like, yeah, he got up and followed them. But I'm like, no, time out. Matthew was a rich, as far as we can tell, young, successful tax collector who had a whole lot going for him. And a random homeless dude walked up to him and said, follow me. And he left everything. Which begs the question that I want us to spend the rest of our time trying to answer. Why did Matt leave everything to follow Jesus? Right? Why did he just okay, great. He literally got up and followed him without asking any questions. No rabbi would have talked to a tax collector. That's a good answer. So there's number one, right? Kind of spoiling my sermon, but I'll take it. I'm only kidding. I love it. He got nothing else left to do. You just ruined my second point. Anybody else? The band can just come on up now and just play, because that is the sermon. Got it. Okay, y'all. Yeah, thank you. Between you two over here, you guys got it down. All right, Alex, you want to come do a couple songs and get out of here? All right, 3 reasons, because we have the slides. We might as well do it. All right. And we're going to focus on 3 words. We're going to just, literally this whole sermon is on one verse. I want to draw your attention to 3 words in this that I think kind of clue us into why a guy like Matthew would follow Jesus. Here's the first reason why I think Matthew followed Jesus. I think he followed Jesus because Matt, saw Jesus seeing him. So why did he just get up and just follow without any questions asked? I think he saw Jesus seeing him. Go back with me again to the verse. It says, as Jesus went from there, he, if you have a Bible, I want you to circle, underline, highlight the word saw. It says that Jesus, what did Jesus do? He saw him. I don't know if my mom's watching, but I don't know if she remembers this, but speaking of growing up in church and Sunday school, I remember, and I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood, but I remember one day we left church and I got into the car and I was sobbing. I was maybe 6, 7 or something, and Mom's like, what? I'm like, I never want to go back to church again. I don't like church. And she's like, whoa, this is a big deal, because my mom's a pastor. She's like, what do you mean you don't like church? She's like, what's going on? And I said, she's like, what happened? I'm like, I can't tell. She's like, what happened? I'm like, well, this is so silly. I'm like, there's a picture of Jesus in our class, and it's always looking at me. It's a true story. I don't know why you guys are laughing, because this was traumatic as a kid. No, seriously. I was crying. Ask my mom if she's in the comment. I was like, he's always looking at me. I'm like, I didn't understand, 2D pictures. And I just remember vividly as a kid, I'd be in class and I'd go to the other side of the room and I'd look and his eyes were looking at me. I'm like, oh gosh. And I'd go to the other side of the room and I'd look and he was staring at me. Right? And just this idea, I just felt like his eyes were following me. And maybe that's comforting to some people, but that freaked me out as a kid. I'm like, because I legit thought blue-eyed, blonde hair, Norwegian-looking Jesus was the actual Jesus. And I'm like, they have a picture, and he's staring at me. Right? I didn't want him to look at me. Okay, and again, you may think I'm reading a little too much into the lines here, but the writer says that as Jesus went up from there, it says that he saw Matthew. Now, maybe some of you in here don't care about this, but some of you are nerds and you're going to enjoy this. But this is amazing. The word that Matthew uses here is the Greek word horao, H-O-R-A-O. and it means saw. But here's what's interesting enough, okay? Luke is the second gospel, right? I told you there's 4 gospel accounts of the life of Jesus. And Luke describes this same story. And when Luke tells this story, he uses a different word, a different Greek word called thaomai. Thaomai. For those of you who want to take notes and want to look it up later. Thaomai. All right, thaomai, I think is how you say it, right? I was trying to get it right. I was listening on Google. How do you say this, you know? Not that you guys know any different. I can say whatever up here. You'd be like, yeah, that sounds like the Greek word, you know? And check this out. So the word saw here, as Luke describes it, here's what that word theomai means. It means to wonder, right? It's where we get the Greek word, or the English word theatrical. Theatrical, there you go. A Nigerian thing sometimes is like a wall. I'm like, it's in my head. I just can't get it out. It's been 22 years. Come on. Okay. But here's what it means. This is amazing. Here's what it means. Here's what the word saw means. All right. This is unbelievable. It means to have an attentive look, to have regard for something, to contemplate, to take in with one's eyes, implying that one is impressed by what they see. That word implies an intent, contemplative gaze. The point is not a mere glance or a quick look, but a long, searching gaze. One writer put it this way. He says, Luke uses a word which describes an intelligent beholding, a careful, deliberate vision which interprets its object, and thus means that Jesus, ready? This is so good. Jesus had an attentive look, implying that he was impressed by what he saw. So when it says that he saw a man, what the writer is saying here is that when Jesus saw a guy that everybody hated, when he saw a guy that everybody would say is a traitor and a scumbag and an immoral cheater and a liar, when he saw a guy who historians say wasn't even allowed to come into the temple because of his reputation, it says that Jesus had an attentive look that implied that he was impressed by what he saw. I probably should have led with this, but one of the reasons why tax collectors were so hated in the first century is not because tax collectors were like the IRS of the first century. That's what some of us think. We're like, is that like the IRS? And people didn't like that it took, a certain percentage out of their paycheck every 2 weeks. Well, nothing's changed. I still don't like the IRS. No. Tax collectors were like almost like local neighborhood crime lords. These were people who had betrayed their own people, their own family and friends for money. They sold out to the Roman government so they could be rich. They were collecting taxes and oppressing their own people. And so the writer says, this is incredible, that when Jesus saw that guy, he looked at him with wonder. Wonder. And I know we've talked about this recently, but I'm going to double down. Jesus is the only God I know who does this. People like to say, the gods are the same. No, show me. I mean, I'm not like a pro at like world religions, right? I've done a little research. Maybe some of you know more than I do, but I'm going to dare you right now. Come meet me after service and show me another God who does this. Show me another God who sees potential in people that everybody has written off. Show me another God who sees the best in the worst. Show me another God who sees people who don't even see themselves anymore. Matthew was a sold out liar and a cheat and a tax collector. He was morally reprehensible. This wasn't like something he did in the secret, because some of us in here, we got secrets and things that nobody knows about, and we can still like dress good and look good at church and impress people. No, Matthew was out publicly. Everybody knew what Matthew was all about, and Jesus saw him. You want to know why I think Matthew was so quick to follow Jesus? I think part of the reason is because nobody had ever looked at Matthew the way Jesus looked at Matthew. I think when everybody else walked by the tax collector's booth, right, Because again, everybody hated. I mean, that's the one thing everybody had in common. We all hate that guy. Right? The only reason they walked by is because, the Roman government was protecting him. And I think when everybody else walked by, they probably did this, right? Or they just roll their eyes. Maybe they spit a little bit at him when he wasn't looking. Jesus was probably the first guy that walked by and he didn't roll his eyes and he didn't look away and he didn't have a look of disgust in his face. I think Jesus looked at Matthew and he saw him and he saw potential and he looked at him with wonder and he was impressed by what he saw. And when Matt saw Jesus seeing him, he's like, I am going with that guy because nobody has ever looked at me the way this guy looks at me. I said this 2 weeks ago. I'm going to say it again. I'm telling you right now that there is a God in the universe who not only holds everything together, but he is so personal that he sees you. Nobody is outside of his gaze. And it is so easy to be in a room like this to feel like I'm by myself and nobody even said hi to me when you told people to say hi and what's going on. I know. We're working on that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But man, if you don't take anything else today, he sees you. He sees you. He's like, I see you. Nobody else. Everybody else is walking by you, but I see you. And I don't just see you, but I see so much potential and wonder. There's this story, I wasn't going to go here, but there's this story in the Old Testament. It's a story of Gideon. Anybody know the story of Gideon? Gideon, long story short, that the nation of Israel, they were being enslaved by the Midianites. Gideon was hiding in a hole at night because he was scared. And the Lord appeared to him. And God said, an angel came to Gideon while he's hiding in a hole because he's so scared. And the angel said this. He says, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Can you imagine? Dude is in a hole and he's hiding. He's got his little cell phone light on his flashlight, hoping no one's coming. Angel's like, hey, mighty warrior. And Gideon's probably like, there's nothing mighty or warrior about me. And God's like, I know what. I know you don't, but man, I see what you don't see. I don't just see where you are. I see who you're going to become. And I'm going to call that out of you. I'm telling you guys, if you could see, okay, and I'm going to just a little disclaimer. This is like the typical preacher talk thing, right? That's easy to dismiss. But I'm telling you, if you could just see half of what God sees when he looks at you, you would not recognize yourself. And what you see would blow you away. If you could see, I don't know what you saw when you looked in the mirror this morning, right? I don't know what you've been telling yourself all week. I'm just a, how we do that thing, I'm just a mom, just a dad. I just work at this thing. I'm just a. That's it. We just keep, and we think it's humble. It's just, I'm just. And God's like, mighty warrior. I know you're in a hole right now, but if you could see what I see, you wouldn't recognize yourself. And what you see will blow your mind. Why did Matthew so quickly follow Jesus? Because nobody had ever looked at him that way before. It says that when Jesus saw him, Matthew's like, I'm following that guy. Why did he follow him? Because he saw Jesus seeing him. Here's the second reason why. This one's a little more subtle. He says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew. And what was Matthew doing? Someone tell me what Matthew was doing. What was he doing? Sitting. Come on, it's not a trick question. What was Matthew doing? Sitting. He was sitting. Right? So my man, I don't know what kind of booths they had. I don't know if it was like the toll booths, when you go through the turnpike, you got a little guy. I don't know what it was. I don't know. But he had a chair. And my man was sitting. So why did Matthew just leave everything to follow Jesus? Number one, I think he saw Jesus seeing him. Number two, I think part of the reason Matthew followed Jesus is because he had nothing better to do. I think Matt had nothing better to do than follow Jesus. And where do I get that from? I get that from that little word there, sitting, which tells me that when Jesus saw Matthew, Matthew was doing the same thing that the people who walked by his booth saw him doing yesterday and the day before that and the day before that and the day before that. He was sitting, just sitting in his tax collector's booth doing what tax collectors do. Okay, now don't miss the point. I'm not implying by saying Matthew had nothing better to do, that he was bored or that he had nothing to lose. I think this posture, if you will, represents the life that Matthew had settled into. Does that make sense? Right? Like this was his thing. This was it. This was his life. He signed the papers. This is it. He's a tax collector. So that's what he did. He did tax collector things. And apparently one of that is that you get a booth and you sit in the chair. And so this rabbi, who nobody would have expected a rabbi to talk to a tax collector like Aaron said in the first century, came back and said, follow me. And I think it can't be lost on us that a part of the reason why Matthew was so quick to get up to follow Jesus is because Matthew had nothing better to do. Let me put it a different way if you're not catching it. Matthew was so quick to get up because nothing he was doing was better than what Jesus was inviting him to do. So I'm not saying that he was kind of bored, like, I got nothing on my plate today. No, he had a lot going on for him. Right? To be a tax collector in the first century, you had to be smart. You had to be cunning. Like you were rich and you were smart and you were successful. So he had a lot going on for him. I'm just saying whatever he had going on for him was not better than what this rabbi was inviting him to be a part of. And so Matt followed Jesus because he had nothing better to do. Let me frame it this way for you. It's a little bit like what happened to me about 20-something years ago. And some of you heard me share this story before. When my mom, I'll never forget this. My mom just ran into our living room out of nowhere like Kramer and Seinfeld. She just like burst into the door. And she said these exact words. It's a true story. She's like, hey, I know you're not supposed to leave for the University of Toledo for another 6 months, but the travel agent just called and told me that there's a flight that's leaving in about 4 hours, and so we have to leave in about 15 minutes because if there's traffic, we're not going to be there on time to make your flight. So I need you to go pack a bag because we're leaving right now. Right now. And I just remember, I think my brothers and I were playing Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo. And I'm looking at my mom like, is this like she's like, no, this is not a drill. You are leaving right this moment. I need you to pack your bags, whatever you can grab. There's no time. This was in 99, by the way, so there was no social media, no high-speed internet, no cell phone. So it's not like I'm going to call my buddies like, hey, man, sorry, I got to peace out. I'm out of here. No. All right, we had one landline that my dad locked with a lock. Anybody grew up when there's like a lock? It was so expensive to make calls, my dad literally put a lock on it. And so I had to decide in that moment. I was 18. I had never been on an airplane before in my life. I had never really left the city of Lagos, Nigeria. And I was about to hop on a flight to come to a city in Ohio that I couldn't pick on a map if you gave me 10 hours to figure it out. And this is so funny. Mom, if you're watching, tell them, let them know I'm not making this up. But I remember we were scrambling. We're just like book bag, like envelope, school stuff, like go, like there's traffic. We got to make this flight. And I'm like, okay. I'm like hugging my brothers. I'm like, what are we going to do? They're like, just get in the wagon. We're going. And I'll never forget my mom. My mom runs inside and she runs out. And she's like, hey. She's like, it's going to be cold in Ohio. So you need something to keep you warm. This is true. This is the actual hat that my mom gave me. All right? Literally. This is it. All right? This is it. I didn't have any coat. There's no winter coat. I grew up in tropical Lagos. The coldest it got is like 70 degrees, right? So I had T-shirts and shorts and, and mom's like, I heard it's cold in Ohio. And so my mom studied in Singapore for a long time, and I think she had this hat, like in the storage somewhere. And she's like, hey, take this hat, honey. It'll keep you warm, So I'm like, all right, I'm ready for Ohio winter. Let's go. In my T-shirt and shorts, like, all right, and sandals. Like, oh, it's so warm. I kept this hat. It's been 20-something years, and we'll put it on our kids sometimes when they go sledding, and they're like, what is this random hat? I'm like, just put it on, okay? It's a legacy, But this hat, every time I see it, I love it because I think it looks good. Does it look good? What do you guys think? Yeah? Yeah, I can pull it off? Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And like, yeah, you know. Look, I got dreads. I got a big head, okay? It's hard to find something that fits, all right? But every time I see it, it's a reminder of the day when I had literally a split second to leave everything and everyone I had ever known. All of my friends, my brothers, family. Literally, I had about 20 minutes to get in the wagon, and I left. And the reason I left is not because I didn't like what was going on, because I didn't have friends, I didn't have something going on. The reason I left is because I knew that this represented a chance for me to be a part of a greater story. The reason I left is because I realized that even though I had all this stuff going on, I had nothing better to do. Like nothing I had going on, and I loved my life. I had great friends. I had all that stuff. But nothing I had going on I knew was better than the opportunity that I was going to have when I came here to America. And so mama's like, hey, I know you're sad. I know you want to cry, but put the dumb hat on and get on the plane. And I'm like, yes, Mom, I will. And we'll figure out the rest later. Why was Matthew so quick to follow Jesus? I think part of it is because, man, Matthew's going, I got this whole tax collector thing going on, but man, are you kidding me? I get to follow this rabbi and we get to change the world. There's nothing I'm doing right now that's better than that. Matthew was just sitting. That's all he's been doing. He's just been sitting, doing a tax collector thing. And Jesus rolled up and he's like, I got nothing better to do than that. And we're going to talk more about this in the next coming weeks. I was going to preach the whole sermon with that hat, but it's real hot. I'm like, I don't know if I can pull that off. But here's the question. And some of you are already smart. You already figured this out. But like, you ever wonder sometimes if the life that you've settled in is all there is? Like, I know it's hard to say these kind of things out loud because it's your life, right? But you ever lay in bed, you know, and you're like, is there more? Like, you ever feel like you were made for more than the American dream? Like, is that it? Okay, go to college. Get a degree, hopefully meet someone that's a little hotter than you. That's what we all hope happens. Get a job, buy a house, hopefully it has a nice picket fence, have 2 kids, dog named Milo, get promoted, save enough money so that when you're old you can retire, and then just hope you don't get sick. And then die and be forgotten by 2 or 3 generations. I mean, I know it's a little more nuanced than that, but come on now, let's be honest. Is that not the life that most of us have settled for? I hope to just get the job and get the house, and hopefully I'm comfortable enough. And like, you ever wonder, is there more? Like, is this it? Matthew was a tax collector sitting in this booth doing his thing. Jesus enters the scene and he gives him an opportunity to be a part of a greater story. And Matthew's like, done. I don't need details. like I don't need details. I'll follow you. And I don't think it's dawned on a lot of us that we're 2,000 years ago from this story, and we're talking about a man. Think about this. We're talking about a man who was sitting on a stool. Like, when Matthew got up, he's just like doing this tax collector thing, you know. It's just like, okay, it's almost lunch break. That's how the story began. But now we're talking about him. We read the stories that he told about the Messiah. And the reason we're talking about Matthew and what he got to be a part of is because Matthew said yes to the invitation. Because when Jesus came, Matthew's like, I ain't got nothing better going on than that. And so he's like, of course, I'm going to leave everything to follow that guy. Why did Matthew get up and follow him? Because he saw Jesus seeing him. But I think it's also because Matthew was eager to be a part of a greater story than the one that he was a part of. Right? And maybe that's some of you in here, you've already signed the thing and you're doing the thing, and it's like maybe it's working out well for you. Like, man, bank account looks great, houses look great, got the lake house, got the boat house, I got all that stuff, but is that it? Is that it? Okay, you guys probably hate it when I say this because it sounds like I'm just being a Debbie Downer, but I'm telling you, man, 2 to 3 generations, nobody's going to care. So much of what we work every day for, and we're just toiling and we're just going crazy, it's going to be in a junkyard 150 years from now. That house that you built that you think is amazing, people are going to walk through it and go, this is ugly. Who thought about this? This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Tear it all down so we can build something else. Nobody's going to care. And so at some point, like Matthew, you and I have to determine, and I'm not saying those things are bad. It's not bad to get a house or kids or dogs or whatever it is that you want to do. I'm just saying at some point, you got to ask yourself, man, am I just settled into this thing, or am I a part of something greater? The invitation to follow Jesus was a call to be a part of a greater story. 3 reasons why he followed him. Here's the number 3 reason. This may be my favorite one. It says that when Jesus went from there, go to that verse again, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. And what did Jesus say to him, Sarah? What did he say? Follow me. Okay, one more time, but this time I want you to emphasize the second word. All right, what did Jesus say to him?
Follow me.
One more time, because that was so good.
Follow
me, right? Why did he follow? Besides being seen and besides he had nothing better to do, I think part of the reason Matthew was so quick to follow Jesus is because Matthew got to be with Jesus. Here's the plot twist that I'm hoping is not a plot twist at all, because a lot of us already know it. The best part about Matthew following Jesus wasn't all the miracles and all the cool stuff they got to do. The best part about Matthew following Jesus was that Matthew got to be with Jesus. In other words, the reason, don't miss this, it was easy for Matthew to leave everything to follow Jesus is Jesus. Jesus is the reason it was easy. So Matthew's going, not only does this guy see me, and not only do I get to be a part of this story, but I get to be with him. I get to be with him. He's the reward. He is the reason. He's not a means to an end. He is the end. And I get to walk with him and commune with him and be his friend. There's nothing better than that. If nothing else works out, that is a good enough reason for me to leave everything, is I get to be with Jesus. Jesus is the reason why Matthew followed Jesus. It's a little bit like what happens when people first fall in love. Anybody in here ever fallen in love? Like crazy, done crazy things? All right? Some of you are literally sitting next to your spouse and you didn't raise your hand. That is, I'm not going to name names, but Dad, I'm like, she is next to you. Anybody ever fall in love? And you're just like, I don't know, man, I don't know. Good luck on the drive home. I'm just saying, the Lord be with you and bless you, make his face shine upon you. Like, come on, that's like the greatest layup in the world. Joe didn't raise his hand, but his wife's not next to him, so I get that. You are literally sitting next to your spouse. Let me give you a second one on that to redeem it. Anybody ever fallen in love and done crazy thing in the name of love? Anybody? Yeah, there we go. Y'all are going to be in trouble today, sleeping on the couch today. That's it, right? But if you've ever fallen in love or been around someone who's fallen in love, I mean, what do people do? People do the craziest thing in the world just so they can be with that person. Right? Some of you are in that scene right now where you're doing stuff that you're like, you can't even tell your friends because they're going to be like, you lost your mind. And you'll do anything, right, to be with that person. Like I remember when my wife and I fell in love. Do you remember, babe? Do you remember? She's like, no, you don't. I'm done, okay? Come on up, Alex. Where's Johnny? You want to come play keys behind me? That's it. Do you remember when? Yeah, she's like, yeah, I kind of do. Do you remember when I would call you? Now, we didn't have cell phones back in there, but I'd call you on the home phone, right? And what would we watch together on the phone? Do you remember? You don't remember? Oh, she does. You You don't want to say it, okay. I would watch The Bachelor or Man Tell All with, obviously I didn't care about, come on, I didn't care about that. But I just want to be with this girl. So I'm like, I will be on the phone with you for 2 hours. I'm like, oh, I don't believe he did that. Is he going to get the rose? I don't know what's going to happen. This is crazy. I didn't care. All right, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I'm like, let's go. Part 2, opening day, front row seats. It's like, what'd you think? Oh, best movie I've ever seen. It's in my top 3 right now. I'll tell you that right now. Top 3 ever. Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I can't wait for part 2, part 3. Do anything. All right, do you remember, how much did I make when we first started getting married? Do you remember? She's like, wait, you remember how much I made? Like $1,500, right? A month. All right, it wasn't a lot, right? And she was working for UT and she made all the money. It wasn't a lot. I was broke. Right? But it didn't matter because I was in love. And I got to be with her. Come on, you know what I'm talking about? Come on, help me out here, man. You know what I'm talking about? Do you remember when you were in love and you were broke and it didn't matter? You're like, I don't even like my in-laws, but we'll live in their basement. All right? I'll move in right now. We'll live in a cardboard box. Come on now, anybody know what I'm talking about? You're like, I will do anything to be with this person. And I grew up in church my whole life, and people would sing that song about following Jesus, and I just could not understand how people could leave everything to follow him. I'm like, I get it, heaven and all that, but how can they leave everything to follow him? But what I didn't understand is that Jesus being with him was worth it all. And so people weren't discounting what they had. It's not like they weren't losing anything. They were just going, hey, like somebody who was in love, I would do anything just to be with him. I'll do anything to be with him. I'll give up anything. I'll go anywhere if I get to be with him. Get to be with him. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way, but come on now. If I'm willing to do everything to be with another human being who's going to let me down, who doesn't load the dishwasher the right way, and I still am willing to give up everything to be with him, how much more should I be willing to leave everything to be with the only one who's never gonna let me down, the only one who's always gonna love me, the only one who's always gonna be patient with me, the only one who will never lie to me, the only one who always tells me the truth even though it is hard, the only one who can pick me up out of that hole and pull me out and set my feet on steady ground, the only one who can save me from myself, the only one who knows the worst part of me and still calls me son and daughter, the only one who has chosen to be favorable towards me, the only one who's always pursuing me, always loving me, always calling me, always checking in on me, never giving up on me, always patient with me, slow to anger, abounding in love, always knocking, always there, always present, always confident, always hoping. What else? Where else am I gonna go? Why would I not leave everything for him? I get to be with him. And I want to do cool stuff with my life. But when it's all said and done, none of that compares to the privilege of being with him. And I'm telling you, when I realized that, it changed everything. People always say, when did you say yes? Or when did you give your life to God? I don't like that question. Because for me, I don't know, I guess I came up at Vacation Bible School when, Just As I Am was playing. I know I came up and I gave my life to Jesus, and I did it the next year after that and next year after that because I wanted to make sure that it held. Like I know I did that, but that's not the moment my life really changed. The moment my life changed was the moment that I truly decided that I'm going to follow Jesus and I'm going to leave everything behind. The moment my life changed was the moment where I'm like, God, there's these things that I've been holding on to my whole life. So now, but I'm going to let it go just to be with you. And I'll never forget, I think it was in the summer of 2000, I was on a missions trip with Student Venture, the student ministry of Campus Crusade for Christ. I remember sitting at this lake house late at night, and I just remember sitting there. I just remember I was just by myself out in the middle of the night, sobbing, right? I was a 19, 20-year-old, and I had all these dreams for my life. Right? I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids, and I wanted to, just do amazing things. I had all these dreams, and I just felt like God was saying to me, Sammy, are you willing to let that go? And I remember just sitting at that lake house, I had my hands open. I was just sobbing. I'm like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But Jesus, I'm going to let it go. And this wasn't one of those trick, you let it go and then God's like, okay, I'll give it to you now. No, I knew there was a chance it would never happen. And I felt like God said to me, Sammy, if I don't give you any of that, will you still choose me? And I was like, this is the hardest thing in the world, but you are worth it, so I'm going to give it to you. If you never want me to get married, you never want me to have kids, you never want me to do any of these dreams, it's okay. I'm going to give it to you as long as I get to be with you. My life changed that night. Fast forward a couple years later, I'm in the basement of my house at 2901 Avondale, and I'm sitting by my bed, broke, college dropout, no driver's license, no plans, no platform, no nothing. I was just mowing grass every single day. That's all I was doing. And I remember sitting by my bed, and I remember saying, this was a couple years after I let everything go, and I remember saying for the first time in my life, Jesus, you are better. This wasn't like I'm saying it because I had to. No. I'm like, wow, you're better. You're better. I know you're better. Like what I'm experiencing right now is better than anything I let go. You're better than my wildest dreams. You're better than marriage. You're better than sex. You're better than drugs. You're better than dreams. You're better than money. You're better than fulfillment. You're better than anything the world could ever have to offer. And I said to Jesus that night, if this is all I have and you don't give me anything else, it is enough because you are better and you are worth it. You are the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the one after my heart. You're better. I choose you. I choose you. And I know. You're like, okay, Mr. Preacher Man, can you just tone it down? I know, but I'm telling you, I'm not just saying this because Bible, He's better. I don't know what you got holding on, what you're holding on to, what you're afraid of. He's better. He's better. He's better. He's better than anything the world could ever offer. He is better than anything that you've been holding on to. He is better. He's better. He's so much better. But you'll never know until you let go.